All right, well, we're going to get started so we can get to that fun banquet on time. You all are really the warriors here. You made it to the 5:20 session, so congratulations. We're really happy to see you. My name is Julia Klein. I'm a professor at Colorado State University and a co-director of the Mountain Sentinels Alliance. We have here Rachel Forbes, who is an associate professor at the University of Denver, or we like to say DU. We have John Hausdorfer, sorry, John. And he is the Dean of the School of the Environment at Western Colorado University and the director of the Center for Mountain Transitions there. We have Kim Langmaid, who is the mayor of Vail. How cool is that? She is also an associate professor at Colorado Mountain College. And then we have Cody Sanford, who is a recent graduate. He was an undergraduate in our department at Colorado State University. So we're really honored to have the opportunity to speak with you all today about how higher education can foster climate action and sustainability for mountains and is training the next generation. Oops. So you heard Rick Miranda talk a bit about CSU today, and there are a lot of initiatives and programs for me to focus on CSU, but I'm going to review a bit in a little more detail what CSU is doing in this space, and then I'm going to ask our distinguished panelists to share what's going on at their institutions. And then we'll hear from Cody, who has had lots of experiences, including he was able to attend COP26 last year as part of our student delegation. And then we'll make a little announcement at the end of this session. Okay. So just to, go through briefly some of the mountain-oriented initiatives at CSU. Former Governor of Colorado, Bill Ritter, has started the Center for the New Energy Economy at CSU. And so they're really helping to facilitate the transition to clean energy across the Western US, and also working with coal-dependent communities, most of which are in mountains, on how to transition away from coal and how to make that transition a little easier. We have wildlife biologists. So I have this book out at our display who are working in extreme environments. So Joel Berger, he's also a senior scientist with the Wildlife Conservation Society, and he's working on wild yak conservation and other biodiversity conservation issues in high mountain areas. You may have seen this Protect Our Winners report that was also funded by by REI. And Rebecca Hill, who's an agricultural economist, did the economic modeling for this report, which was talking about how snow sports are an economic powerhouse in terms of fueling our economy. And she's also has a student now, Skylar, who is looking at Colorado's newest state park, Fisher's Peak State Park. And it's in a county where the median income is 48% lower than the state's average, and the poverty rate is 11% higher than the state's average. And so they're exploring how agritourism, which includes outdoor recreation, can really revitalize rural areas. Our Colorado Water Center is really huge and has so many different programs that I can't even do it justice here. So please visit the website. The Colorado Forest Restoration Institute is really working on wildland fire and fire restoration and prevention across the West. And then hopefully when you came in, you saw some of the art that was scrolling through. And so we have, fine artists and poets, of course, and writers and filmmakers. And so this is just a student art project focused on climate change in the mountains. So we have an impact MBA program, we have a sustainable fashion program. There's really a lot of exciting things going on. We have the Mountain Sentinels Network. We'll have a side event tomorrow, working across mountains globally and with 18 networks worldwide as well. And what I really like about CSU is that I do feel like CSU is walking the talk, in the sense that we are ranked as, often the top sustainability ranked institute, a doctoral institute granting organization, first in sustainability nationwide over almost a decade. So that has to do with our power, our heating and cooling, how everyone gets around, what we do with our food, and students are really actively engaged in how we are such a sustainable campus. So I mentioned students, and here we are to talk about the fact that youth are the guardians of the future, right? And so what I'm showing you here, I teach a senior capstone class on practicing sustainability. And this was just one semester's worth where we have examples of people that we partnered with. So we had student groups come together, and the students actually worked with these different organizations, businesses, youth organizations, farms, the city of Fort Collins and their climate action plan. And all of these different entities had sustainability projects that they needed help on, and that students worked collaboratively with them throughout their senior semester to really help these entities advance. And they really learned what practicing sustainability means. And then that was just at the local level. Globally, we also have a program where we bring students to the climate change talks, and Cody will talk a bit about that as well. And it's really a very much bottom-up student-led initiative that we're really excited about. And so I think one of our key messages, we've talked before this panel started, and we kind of wanted you to take away 2 key messages, and then I'll ask our panelists what they're doing at their institutions. But we wanted to emphasize, one, that institutions of higher education really need to work with and for society, with NGOs, governments, businesses, local communities in just and ethical ways. And so we just had a meeting in Basalt for 3 days with local and indigenous mountain people, really focusing on centering their worldviews and knowledge in this work. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that our students, yes, knowledge is helpful, but really they need to learn and experience deep collaboration, respect for knowledge systems, and really how to foster ethical spaces in which to work. And so with that, I would like to start with our first panelist, Rachel, and just ask you, how your institution at University of Denver, how you're advancing climate action and sustainability for mountains. Thank you for sharing.
So I'm Rachel Forbes. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Glenwood Springs, where I'm the director for the Western Colorado Master of Social Work program. And oftentimes I get the question of, well, you're a social worker, so what does that have anything to do with environmental justice or climate change or sustainability? And then I get to go into a long, deep conversation about all the ways that we all should care about these issues, but in particular, what social workers are doing to advance this work. So just a little bit about the history of the program here in the Roaring Fork Valley. So the University of Denver was approached by community here, specifically Colorado Mountain College and the Department of Human Services for Garfield County in 2011. And the issue was clear that there are more jobs for social workers than there are social workers to fill those roles. And, social work, doing the work of behavioral mental health, working with folks who are experiencing significant traumas after a disaster, whether that's a fire or a mudslide, people who are displaced. When we talk about affordable housing, these are all injustices that social workers are engaging with to help at-risk and vulnerable populations. And specifically, social workers, we engage with folks who are living in poverty, folks experiencing homelessness, those with disabilities, et cetera. So when we think about people who are living at the margins of our societies, and we think about climate change exacerbating those those issues and those vulnerabilities, that's where social workers can come in, and we can help with resources. We think in systems, we do policy advocacy. Historically, we are community organizers. We kind of do it all. And I would also add that social workers are when we have mental health services that are in response to disasters worldwide, social workers are at the top. And when we talk about people that are deployed to do psychological first aid or mental health services in those settings. And so we really do have a role to play in all of this work. But back to the local context. So in 2013, we launched our first program of graduate students. We have office space on Grand Avenue in Glenwood, cohabitated with the Human Services Department. And then we also have classroom and office space at the Glenwood Center in Glenwood Springs. And so it's been really nice to see the community invite us in. And since 2013, we've graduated over 100 master's level social workers who know the rural context, who live in these communities in our mountain towns, and who are staying here. Because oftentimes, you will have somebody that lives in Rifle, they grew up in Rifle, they want to go back to school, but then they go down to the city and then they never come back. And then that brain drain thing kind of happens over and over again. And so one of the nice things about our program is that we're able to keep people living and working where they want to stay rooted in these little mountain towns that are near and dear to their heart, where they understand the culture and the context of the people that live here. And so it's just really been such an amazing process to see this program unfold in partnership with the community, see social workers engaging with nonprofits and schools and hospitals. One of the things we're paying close attention to is some of the impacts over the last several years with the Canyon fire and the subsequent flooding, and how our social workers are engaging with families who have been displaced or experiencing psychological distress. So that's something that our students are particularly interested in, is the intersections of mental health and environmental degradation and climate change. Like we know that these impacts are very psychologically distressing, whether that's eco grief or anxiety about the climate. And social workers who we do clinical mental health. That's like one of the biggest avenues and career pathways for us. Seeing those two issues married together and producing research and practice to advance that has been really something to keep an eye on. It's something that I'm particularly interested in. I think you're going to see more of that moving forward. So that's just a little bit about what we do. If you're interested in learning more about social work as it relates to climate change and environmental justice, let me know. I'm happy to speak to you after our panel. Thanks, Julia.
Wonderful. That's such important, such vital work for the community. So thank you. Okay, now we're going to introduce John, who I didn't put his website up, and I feel bad, but he's a great talker, so he'll just take it away.
Thank you, Julia. I've been looking at this logo all day, Ideas to Action, and been thinking about this panel, and really, I want to be challenged by you all with this question that I guess I'll challenge you with. How can universities be a catalyst in moving ideas into action? That is my sense of purpose as university dean and mission that I bring to this gathering. And I want to talk a bit about how our programs at Western Colorado University, which by the way is just on the other side of the Elk Mountains here. 3 of my students even walked over for this event. 7 of our grad students are here today. Raise your hand, say hi. Please pull them aside, yes. And they are open about what real action plans are going to have to look like for mountain resilience, starting with Colorado, but globally by 2030. What we do at Western to translate ideas to action starts with our undergraduate programs. We've just developed 4 new bachelor's degrees that are not only career-oriented, but action-oriented. One is, we think the first bachelor's in the country, someone please correct me because we want to learn from you, in climate action planning. One is in public lands management with an eye toward co-management with indigenous communities. One is in water security, one is in food security. On the graduate level, however, is where we really have discovered an emerging role, we hope, as a catalyst. Our Master in Environmental Management program has sort of like replaced the thesis with a project. And in the second year of our master's program, students are asked to go anywhere in the world identify through a gap analysis with community leaders and community experts what needs to get done based on their skill set, to enter that community with humility and help extend the reach of overextended organizations trying to build mountain resilience. If you're interested in the 25,000 hours a year of master's projects in communities around the world, you can kind of go on our website and search for different kinds of projects and find a global map. western.edu/SES-network. So western.edu/SES-network. I want to share a couple of those actions to give you a sense of what we're up to. Right here in the Elk Mountains, one of our master's students worked with an environmental engineer from Colorado School of Mines and asked, how can you turn 3 problems into one comprehensive action? Paonia Reservoir was filling with sediment, is filling with sediment. We're seeing that with reservoirs across the West. Mines are closing and leaking methane, and miners are out of work, right? And so this engineer needed a business manager to develop the business, Delta Brick Company, to take sediment, turn the methane into energy, employ the former miners to make bricks and tiles. The new library in Gunnison has 11,000 of those bricks in the new building. He's about to move the factory to Paonia to employ former miners using sediment from the reservoir powered by methane turned into energy. That's the kind of master's project we look for. On the ground, practical, transforming 3 problems into one solution. We also are working very closely with ranchers on regenerative agriculture. We're Colorado's Savory Institute hub. And so we're working with ranchers on bunching and moving livestock around to mimic wildlife, to enhance grasslands, hold water in the soil in the arid West, and sequester carbon. So we have, in some cases, climate-denying ranchers excited to partner with our students on a climate solution because they want to see themselves as grass farmers, right? Helps them stay on the land. Again, turning these unlikely partnerships into new next-generation solutions. But I do want to stress that as proud as we are of these actions and of our partnerships across mountain communities, humility itself is an action. We had a really humbling experience. We have a sister city relationship with Majkali, India. And I brought a group of students there several years ago. And one of our students, before coming to our grad program, had been a green builder. And he'd worked very closely with experts in that community, brought air quality monitoring equipment, and was very concerned about the air quality in the different kitchens in that rural community. He brought fans to install, but didn't have enough fans for the entire community. And he installed fans only in the homes that had the highest levels of air pollution, not asking the community who gets the fans. And we left behind conflict rather than a solution. Because from the community's point of view, the woman who just lost her husband to suicide had low air quality issues and didn't get a fan, right? And so, how to enter these communities, not just with a sense of ideas to action, but to see humility itself as an action is a major question. And as we work with Telluride Institute, Aspen International Mountain Foundation to form the Mountain Resilience Coalition, to create models based in Colorado for climate mitigation and adaptation that serve underserved communities, I think the most important skill in turning ideas to action is that skill of humility. The most humbling as a teacher. So, thank you.
Thank you, John. Kim, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, I'm humbled by all of your stories, but what dawns on me is that we each fill a different niche with our different colleges and universities in Colorado. And I'm working with Colorado Mountain College, which is located in the 12,000 square mile territory of these mountains here and many mountain communities. I think we have 11 different campuses. So Colorado Mountain College was established just over 50 years ago by a vote of the people of the mountain communities to really serve the mountain communities. So all of the programs that we offer are really in response to requests from the mountain communities. And just this last year, we were given a dual mission designation, the first in Colorado, which means we not only offer four-year degrees, but we also offer associate's degrees and certificates, so that we have many different opportunities for students to come in, go out, come back, and really tailor their learning and education to match their careers as they evolve in the mountains. So my role there is to teach in the Sustainability Studies program, which was launched about 11 years ago as one of the first of two bachelor's programs. The other one was in business, and these were in direct response to our communities saying, we need more people growing up in our communities that are ready to enter the workforce in terms of their business skills, and we also need those that are able to help us with sustainability challenges. And so this degree was designed as a transdisciplinary program that really braids together economy, environment, society, and culture to create actionable solutions. So our students are working towards a research capstone with recommendations that go back to their communities. They're able to participate with collaborative initiatives like the Climate Action Collaborative for the Eagle County community, the Mountain Ideal Sustainable Destination Initiative, the Eagle County Community Wildlife Roundtable, and many different community stakeholder organizations, collaborations, businesses, to get a feel for what it's like to be out there in their communities and helping to create solutions. So they are giving back to our communities and envisioning themselves as the next community leaders. And I'm always encouraging them, wearing my mayor hat, to show up at some of our local meetings and tell us what they'd like to see, how they'd like things to go, because the young people are the future of our communities here. And with respect to climate action, they are rearing to go and wanting us to do more all the time. And so just this past weekend, there was a new event over in Vail called Climb It for Climate. And the community was involved in coming together and raising money for climate education and learning along the way, celebrating successes and taking pledges. And we had about 450 people participate in the first one. So it just speaks to how much our mountain youth and mountain communities are really starting to embrace the challenge of climate change. And they don't want to wait any longer. They want to do it right now. And some of you mentioned some of the issues that are going on in terms of the forest fires and floods. Colorado Mountain College just launched 2 new degrees this year in response to these types of things. We have a new program, Bachelor of Science in Ecosystem Science and Stewardship, and also one in response to what Rachel was talking about in human sciences, to train young people to provide more of that counseling in response to some of the behavioral health issues in our mountain communities. So CMC is very adaptive and always looking to try and meet the community and help us evolve. We also are taking students out into the larger world, like John said, and learning that sense of humility from other cultures. We have a partnership with the Royal Thimphu College in Bhutan, where we go there and learn from students there and their faculty about how Bhutan addresses sustainability and climate action. And that is an amazing and humbling experience, our students say. And then also a new and emerging partnership in Chile with Universidad de la Frontera. And we have been taking students to Chile for several years and doing the River of Life program, where students are learning about Chilean activists and how they are working hard to protect their rivers there, and how that might translate for when they come back to the US, how to protect our important watersheds here. So there is a lot to do, and very exciting collaborations happening with our students in our mountain communities.
Thank you. That's really exciting to hear about all those initiatives. Thank you. Cody, do you want to just share, as a recent CSU grad, some of your experiences?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I finished my undergraduate degree during the heat of the pandemic, when you couldn't do field work, you couldn't go and meet people like this. So we had to come up with ideas to create action for our degree. And one of the most profound ways that we had was through virtual climate summits, sort of like this, for undergraduate students, where we were able to do research, present it to each other, and then talk about it, and then reconvene again at a later date. We did about 3 summits like that virtually with students, and because of these summits, we were asked to contribute to the COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland last year. We held side events, and we were trying to engage with the public on how to come at these solutions through an optimistic lens, because we all know the climate crisis is bleak. We all know we need to act now, but what we don't know is exactly where we can look to for hope. So at the climate summit last year, you can see us with a few of my colleagues were students from all over the world, from Australia, from Peru, from the United States, the United Kingdom, and other places that I'm not mentioning. We convened together at the Global Climate Summit to come up with these goals, come up with these plans that we've had, and it was a great success. We were able to have a number of different connections built with people around the world, where we could see how our ideas here were relevant to them across the world. So that's some of the stuff that we did at the Climate Summit. But I want to talk about why it's important to bring students to the Climate Summit. The Youth Environmental Alliance in Higher Education is who brought us. They're, like I said, an affiliation of universities and networks across the world. They're a part of the Ringo Coalition at COP26, which is the research and independent non-government organizations. They teach students how to navigate these large-scale climate summits. And I don't know if you've ever walked into one of these without knowing what to expect, but it can be a lot. And and also when you have a specific issue that you're trying to focus on, this group of people in the network, they help students of all ages from any background came to us, and we were able to come together and point each other in the best direction. We take notes that we share with each other and other research and non-government organizations. The work that we were able to do at the Climate Summit was instrumental in my own career path. I want to talk about now what I've been doing locally. My undergraduate degree has been very focused on the research side of things, not so much the people. I've done research projects on nature-based solutions to climate change, looking at land management practices and how they affect the carbon and nitrogen content in the soil. I was able to look at the housing and dining department and look at their food purchases and give them a recommendation on doing a more sustainable purchasing pattern. We also did at CSU work with urban sustainability. And as you can see with all the organizations that Julia has mentioned, CSU is very well connected to bring students from a local place then to a global place with these issues. At CSU, one of the most important lessons that I would say in terms of climate action has been communication. Being able to communicate these large-scale ideas is very important to people who may not understand them. And that's why I think it's important that Julia showed all the different art and storytelling methods that CSU is doing. Because if we're going to reach communities who don't understand this same knowledge base, we're going to have to meet them where they are and not expect them to come to us. I don't want to go too long, but if you have any more questions, I'd love to talk about this. And I do want to say thank you to Julia for bringing me on this panel with these fine people. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cody. Really great. And he also has a podcast that he started with another student called The Livable Future.
Yeah, that's another way that I think is important, is that we need to be climate educators as well, and having dialogues with people and sharing them, I think, is an important way that we can begin that.
Wonderful, thank you. Such inspiring work and action going on across our state and beyond. So we thank the Mountain Partnership for bringing us together and the Aspen International Mountain Foundation, because it gave us an opportunity to kind of talk and think, well, what can we do together? And so we have decided that we wanted to take the Aspen Declaration and that we're gonna, in the next year, have our students working on projects that embody and implement those actions. Again, giving students the opportunity to, kind of have a say in what that looks like on the ground. And of course, with the humility and the sort of deep collaboration that we believe is needed. And so we're excited to try this out over the next year. And we're hoping a year from now to be able to share back with you all kind of what we've seen and what we've been able to do. So yeah. We'll see how that goes, but we're excited. So we have some time. Are there any questions of any panelists from our audience? Yes, sunshine. And I told you there were so many programs at CSU. I didn't even get to mention the ski area management program, master's degree that we have.
Thank you, Julia. Hi, I'm Dr. Sunshine Swetnam. I'm a Colorado native, and I really just have a comment. Well, two things. Thank you for being in the room. Students, I'm so glad you're here. It's awesome. I want to hear about the walk, and I really do. And the other part, I just wanted to give a reflection. I think it's so important, the work that you guys are doing, and it's a collaborative, it's a collective. Some of us are keeping people in our communities and empowering them there, and others of us are receiving people and launching them out like arrows to other parts of the globe. And I just think it's so important that we have that web of light going. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you so much for what you're doing and sharing with us.
Thank you.
We purposefully built in extra time for Q&A, and we'd love to see some end of the day conversation if you all would like to take advantage of that time, even though your stomachs are starting to growl a little bit. And
Well, it's been a day, huh? What an amazing day of learning and ideas and action. Yes.
I'm curious. I have a colleague, Dr. Houseworth, there. How often are you able to collaborate?
the question was, how often are we able to collaborate?
Our group.
Across the board here?
Well, Kim, we started communicating pre-COVID when we were launching a Moving Mountain Summit, which got postponed until very recently. So that's kind of where we initiated our work. And actually, when we were working with Mountain Youth, we had some students this past spring who were working with this Mountain Youth group, which is up in Edwards, Colorado. We graciously hosted them at Colorado Mountain College. So, there have been some smaller connections. John and I have, actually I mentored one of your students, me and my graduate student. So we've had some, smaller collaborations. Oh, and then with your students when they were in Austria.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Julia was so helpful. We brought the last time I brought a crew of 7 people, it was to the International Mountain Conference in Austria, and then the Mountain Partnership was kind enough to host them in Rome to present their sort of progression of mountain projects they were working on as master's students, and they were a little nervous about that Rome presentation. So while in Austria, Julia was like sounding board for them, right? And that's how she got to know the student who then worked with you for her master's project.
Exactly, yeah.
And we've also partnered on International Mountain Day, where we've had, and this is something Rosalara and others, Yuka, asked for when we were in Rome, that there really wasn't an entity. We heard the idea of a mountain university this morning, but there really wasn't an entity organizing mountain-based university projects in the way that there is for nation states and NGOs. And so the beginning of that was some collaboration on International Mountain Day on pre-COVID Zoom. Zoom did exist before COVID.
Well, I was just going to say, I think we've collaborated more informally in the past due to maybe more formally on these projects. But I really am looking forward to really activating our students across Colorado and exposing them to what comes out of this meeting with the Aspen Declaration, so that at least they all have a familiarity with it. And if they see something that resonates with them and their community, they can step up and take their capstone project or another course project and put that into actionable work. So we'll see how it evolves. There's no grand master plan. We've just cooked this up today. So we'll be accountable. We'll report back in some form or fashion as well.
It's not slow food yet. It was fast food, but it'll become slow food.
Any other thoughts, inputs, questions? Sure. Go for it.
This is Anna Full, by the way, PhD candidate in watershed science. You're welcome. She's awesome. And we teach at the Mountain Campus for CSU, and we've taught a class up there, Ecology and Measurements, for 109 years. And I easily will pledge to include that Aspen portion into my students, and I encourage other educators in this room to consider it, because that's how then the greater we collaborate, that's the web that I'm talking about.
That is a fantastic idea that we should really tweet or TikTok this out and really get, even beyond the state of Colorado or, middle, high schools really working on this.
Anna wants me to share with you that the people that have to take the course is pretty much all of Warner College of Natural Resources minus one or two programs, more or less. So thousands of people.
Is that at the Pingree Park? Yeah. In the 90s, I led trail crews out there.
It's Mountain Campus now.
I haven't been back. I just want to say with the PhD students, one of the things we started to work on with your conservation leadership program like 8 years ago, we'd never followed through enough, was the idea of the recommendations that come out of a research-based R1 dissertation could become a master's project. Imagine being a PhD student, knowing your work's going to turn into a project. And sometimes the best questions for research come out of on-the-ground projects. And so I think the fact that we've replaced the thesis with a project could be in a reciprocal relationship with research-driven work.
That's conservation leadership through learning in the human dimensions of natural resources department, which is my department. Feel free to talk about it.
Yeah, so we have both research at the master's level, both research-based theses, but also professional master's degrees where there's not research, but it's more kind of practical work. But even in the research sphere, we all recognize how we need to transform science from, just being cooked up in the ivory tower to really coming to us from the ground.
Well, and then to your point too about disseminating that information and how we communicate that data and research out is important too. I love that you brought up the podcast. I teach a course called Contemporary Environmental Justice Issues in Western Colorado, and we ditched all of the traditional assessments, if you will, when it comes to APA papers, but I do have them do blogs and I have them record original podcasts for their assignments, because I think that the impact is so much greater. I mean, when they write a paper, it's wonderful. I get to read it. When they broadcast their voice to the world, what an impact they can make. So I'm all about those non-traditional assessments in higher ed too. Like, we need to get this research out there in a way that feels digestible to people as well.
Yeah, and about that sort of assessment, I think, is really important. One of the reasons and one of the ways I gain confidence to be on a stage like this and to do a podcast is one of my final classes was an oral exam where we had 40 plus questions, and there was like 6 or so that we were going to have to answer in depthly. So we had to know the whole class well enough that we were going to orate it back to the person who was the head of the department. So that sort of skill set where you're teaching people to not just write about it, but then to speak about it in a way that is like common sense English, I think is really, really important. So, yeah.
If you found your way into the western.edu/SES-network, type in Jillian Steininger. She created a podcast interviewing mountain women from across the North America, Central America, Caribbean region. Be cool for you to check out. Western students, are you going to adopt Cody for the rest of the week? And Nicole?
So I love where this conversation has gone. I've just come to the public portion of this, and it's so interesting to see global networks translate down to more local networks, and then watch the conversation of how you're all interconnected. And I also love that science is getting disseminated through action and words of people that are connected to communities. I'm curious to hear maybe from you, Julia, or whoever else is involved, about a little bit more about the Mountain Sentinels and how that interfaces with higher ed, or if it does.
Yes, and we do have a session that Mountain Sentinels is involved in tomorrow, where I'll talk more specifically about that network. There are a couple of different ways. I mean, one is through our fellows program. So we had a fellowship program that was open to students, or, most of the fellows were students or youth, not necessarily in school. So we have like a poet, artist, activist from Appalachia, for example, who received this award. And so, that's one way. Some of the students the fellowship recipients were PhD students working in, we had a Nepalese student who was working with his community in Nepal, in Dolpo, and a woman who was working in Peru. So we, each student or fellow received a mentor. So for example, we had someone in Uganda who was really interested in the intersection between animal welfare and health. And we happened to have like an amazing vet school at CSU, as well as a great One Health Institute. And they were really engaging. They had another project in Uganda. So he connected with the One Health Institute at CSU and just like took off, really, really helping his interests, and really advanced his interests. And we continue to stay. Here's Twalsong Kai, who is a mountain community member from Myanmar, is also one of our recipients and a graduate student. And they all last year posted, we had a side event at the climate change talks, and all of the fellows created a message that they wanted delivered. It was a video message that was delivered to the negotiators. So we have a new grant where we're actually expanding our engagement with students, as well as maintaining the fellows program, expanding our student exchanges. So for example, one of our partners is at UC Denver. There's a certificate program in environmental stewardship of indigenous lands. And so we're gonna have students from that program do an exchange program with students from the Canadian Mountain Network, which is based on indigenous and Western science and braiding knowledges. So we're gonna have very specific student exchanges where students can apply for funds to go to different places to work and to learn and to share and to have an impact. So thank you.
Use that microphone, Chase.
Hello. Oh, wow, this thing works. Hello, everybody. My name is Chase. I attend Western Colorado University. For the record, the hike over was absolutely beautiful. If any of you have an opportunity to do so, it's worth looking at. For my question, as we all know, whether it's the panelists here or people in the room or those who have been here before, mountains and mountainous regions can be a place of both great inclusivity as well as great exclusivity based on simply where they're located and what it takes to access them as well as get out of them. My question is that what role does belonging play in both academia, but specifically in mountainous regions as well as communities? What challenges have you all occurred in regards to that?
I mean, I'll just answer by, in student conversations that I have, CMC is designated Hispanic serving college. So we do have maybe 25% of our students are Hispanic, Latino, and many of them talk about this, disconnect. Absolutely. Whether or not they don't feel safe, they don't feel included, they don't have the equipment. And so a lot of them are very interested in working in that space. And some of the other campuses that I am not actually teaching at, but the Leadville campus in particular has an outdoor gear lab and just ways of providing greater access to the outdoors for students. But it is a big area of action and concern in creating more equity in outdoor recreation and sustainability education and all of these things like you mentioned. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And Mountain Sentinels, we have 2 Indigenous co-leads, and there is a lot of trauma and around some of our mountain communities and how they've been displaced and their histories that have been basically erased from our education system. And so it's an important issue. I think there's a lot of healing and listening and stepping back that we need to do.
Yeah, and thank you for that question, Chase, particularly in framing around belonging, right? I noticed you used that word. In addition to what Kim said about finding ways to include students from different backgrounds in feeling at home in all the ways of loving the mountains, I think it's also about including, with equal legitimacy, diverse ways of knowing, which gets to what Julia is talking about. We have just finished a grant with National Geographic to get students into Bears Ears National Monument, working with the Ute Mountain Ute and other tribes. One of our grad students is Regina Lopez White Skunk. We're lucky enough to have her help the professor lead that, but they developed with the BLM and those tribes a co-management plan for the interpretive education systems of Bears Ears. And it's moving toward that co-management that's important. And I think the trauma, I'm curious what you think as someone who has a social work background, the trauma Julia talks about is so real. The Indigenous students that I've been lucky enough to work with, you've just called my homeland a wilderness and it's your playground. I mean, that just, it's so painful, and so there's a lot of reckoning and healing that goes along with a sense of belonging.
Yeah, I would just say that I agree with all of the comments by the panelists. And I would also say, I think there is good work being done that isn't often visible. And so I think it's about amplifying stories of work that is being done by community. One of the initiatives that I'm involved with is called Latino Conservation Week, and that's by the Hispanic Access Foundation. And it's a week in July when we basically just take over social media and we just amplify the voices of folks doing work that wouldn't necessarily have that platform to say, like, yes, we are doing this conservation work. This is of my culture. This is what we're doing. Because I think it's sometimes good work is overlooked, I think, a lot of times too. And so I think it's about, again, amplifying those stories where they might not have the visibility because of issues surrounding power, privilege, and oppression and things like that. So thank you for that question.
Okay, the red light has been beeping for about 4 minutes now. So I know folks are maybe ready to go enjoy this really lovely dinner celebration that the Aspen International Mountain Foundation and the Mountain Partnership have planned for us all. So thank you so much for sticking with us. I really appreciate all the panelists, what they're doing, the work, and look forward to our year together, trying to implement the declaration with our youth groups. And thank you, Cody, for staying around with us old folks.
I got you.
Okay, and feel free to reach us anytime throughout this conference.
Thank you, everyone.